Hey guys, just before we get to the topic at hand, I wanted to let you know a couple of things. First, the recording for this actual topic was done in July of 2021, which is about 2 years ago from the date that I'm actually going to put out this video. Um, so if there's any outdated information, that would be why, because it was recorded, I think, pre-campaign 3. So wanted to let you know that. And then second, if you're curious about the gameplay, it's coming from Elden Ring, and this is the character that I used in my stream when I did all the Elden Soulsborne games. Although this is, new footage basically after I've beaten the game with that character. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and check out the Elden Soulsborne playlist to see that. But anyway, without further ado, let's get to the topic at hand. Alright, how you guys doing today? I'm here for another video. I believe this will be the first 2021 video on this channel, and I don't think this is the one that I wanted to start off with, unfortunately. But welcome nonetheless. I'm going to be talking about a pretty harsh subject, although I do promise there will be a silver lining at the end, if you can take it as a silver lining. So, this is your warning now. If you cannot take harsh criticism, you should probably get out now, because I am going to get a little harsh, and I do apologize for that, because it's not necessarily in the spirit of Critical Role, given that Critical Role's kind of main thing is about positivity, and this isn't really spreading positivity, but I think it can in time if we let it. If you can take these criticisms to heart, if you're somebody that, believes what I'm about to, in my opinion, try and debunk. I'm not going to say that I'm going to end the argument, but take it, reflect on it, and perhaps your attitude can be a little bit more positive once all is said and done. So, perhaps in a roundabout way, this can spread positivity, but um, to basically reference Full Metal Alchemist, right? With alchemy, first you have to deconstruct and then reconstruct, and that's what I hope to do today. So, without further, I don't want to say further ado because it's cliche, but I just did, so fuck it. Um, let's get into the subject at hand. If you read the title, you know exactly what this is about. Why I believe the Mercer Effect does not exist and is actually just something that we've known for a very long time. It's something that's existed as far as human history has been recorded. So, why we're calling it a Matt Mercer Effect now is beyond me. So, let's start by defining it. What is considered the Matt Mercer Effect? Well, put very simply, the Matt Mercer Effect is in regards to Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. We're talking about our D&D game is not as good as Critical Role, or I'm not as good a DM as Matt Mercer, and that disappoints new players or new DMs from wanting to play D&D, or taking it out on other players, like, oh my gosh, you're not exactly like what is on Critical Role, what's going on? And Matt himself has even come out and said that the Matt Mercer Effect exists and he takes responsibility and yada yada. But I'm gonna just say that I think he's wrong. I think the Critical Role cast is wrong about quite a few things, and I think this is one of them. Um, when it comes to Matt, he's not responsible for this Mercer Effect, and he shouldn't be held responsible, and he shouldn't be guilty. But here's the thing about Matt, and if you've followed Critical Role for a while, you know exactly what plagues him, and that is the fact that he has, that imposter syndrome. He struggles with body dysmorphia and stuff like that. Not that the dysmorphia has anything to do with the subject, but I'm just explaining to those who may be more casual watchers who have only watched the show and have never watched anything outside of just the Critical Role streams. He has imposter syndrome, which is the main thing. And what, again, in a nutshell, what that is they say, I don't belong here, I shouldn't have this success, I don't deserve it. Even though he does. 100%. He deserves every bit of credit he's gotten. He's incredible. I've been a fan of his for many years, even before Critical Role. I loved his voice work. I still do. He's one of my favorite voice actors. And maybe there's a bit of bias in that, but to be fair, he's won over so many people that didn't know who he was before Critical Role, so I think that speaks for itself. Again, he has imposter syndrome, and he constantly believes, I don't deserve this, it wasn't me, I'm just fortunate to have this. And, people will agree. They'll take advantage of it. And to me, it's a form of mental abuse. And while it may be to a small degree, it's not a massive mental attack on the scale that it's on, where there are so many people doing it to one person. It can be a lot. And so it's understandable why he's going to feel guilty and he's going to take the blame for something that isn't his fault, because there are so many people that have laid this at his feet, and we have a whole term, the Mercer Effect, to describe it. And there's no way he's not going to take the blame. That's just who he is. He's one of the most empathetic people that, exists on the internet as far as personalities go. And he's taken the blame for quite a few things on Critical Role that he did not deserve. I'm not going to really go into those details, but some of you who know, you know. So let's talk a little bit about what the Matt Mercer effect really is. And this is, of course, the harsh aspect of the video. So again, if you can't handle it, this is your last warning. The Matt Mercer effect is, very simply put, a lack of creativity. There's no other way to put it. And again, I apologize. That's not this is not positive energy yet. But people can be very not creative. I mean, meme culture in of itself is people taking things that people have done and putting very, very slight variations on them. Or if you go to any meme site, like any Facebook memes or 9gag or Funny Junk, there are tons of reposts, and there are memes about reposts, and people literally will copy and paste things that they find funny and try to pass it off as their own. Like, that's an actual thing that exists. We've been doing this, again, since human history has been recorded. I'm not going to go into everything, but literally you name a topic and there's somebody who does something very similar. If you look at cooking, we've tried to replicate the magic of pizza how many times, with different styles, slight variations. Even if we're looking at cooking shows, Iron Chef breeded how many cooking competitions, and then Kitchen Nightmares breeded a bunch of let's go save a business from failing. Not even, cooking businesses, just businesses in general. Let's go save businesses by giving them pointers. If you look at, American Idol spawned how many different singing shows and talent shows that are really thinly veiled as singing shows. If we look at video games, how many 2D platforms existed on the NES that were trying to replicate the success of Mario? Or once The Last of Us came out, The Last of Us changed everything in terms of how we told stories in video games. And, how many people tried to replicate the success of Arkham Asylum's uh, gameplay, the combat system of Arkham Asylum. It's it's nothing new. None of this is new. In books, there's fantasy before Tolkien, and then there's fantasy after Tolkien. How many people have tried to replicate Lord of the Rings? And now people have tried to replicate Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones, as some people know it. It's I can keep going and going and going and going. DC has tried to replicate the Avengers. Marvel has tried to replicate the magic of the first Avengers. It's something that has changed superhero movies forever. And in the case of Dungeons and Dragons, Critical Role has changed the way D&D is viewed forever. It's changed the way Twitch has worked forever. Nobody thought that this would be a thing on Twitch, and then Critical Role came around, and guess what? Everybody and their brother wants a fucking stream, their own stream set up to play Dungeons and Dragons. So what am I actually saying here? To boil it down, is that, again, if something's successful, people will try to replicate it. That's it. It's not difficult to understand. If you think about it logically for 2 seconds, the Matt Mercer Effect is nothing new. And I think we should stop using that term. I think we should drop it. Because ultimately, it's extremely harmful to Matt. And I think it's harmful to us people who play the game and, have been inspired by Critical Role. And I'll explain why it's harmful to us in a second, but it's harmful to Matt for very obvious reasons, because, again, we're sidling him with more guilt than he deserves. It's not his fault that, we're not as creative. Like, he's not our parents. Nobody in Critical Role, they're not our parents. They didn't teach us this or, anything, unless you're one of the few people that are actual children of the Critical Role cast, in which case, hello, your parents are amazing. Sorry. Anyway, that aside, it's true. I agree with some people that, some people are more creative than others naturally. Some people are born with, more creative ideas or just a more imaginative mind. But at the same time, creativity is also a muscle, and it can be worked and it can be built up over time. Even people who are not naturally inclined to that type of thing, they can still build those muscles over time and learn and grow as human beings. And I think that's not something that's really put enough emphasis on today, is, nothing's my fault, nothing, the world is against me, yada yada yada, and it's an easy mentality to have. I get it, I've been there. So many times have I been there. But on the other shoe, there is this lovely thing called personal growth. And I understand where it comes from. I think a lot of people who gravitate towards Dungeons and Dragons and, even fantasy in general, have been marginalized in society in some way. Perhaps you weren't like the rest of the people around you. I certainly was like that. And there are a lot of people who have been victimized in the past, and they believe everything is their fault, like Matt. And then, when you're taught otherwise, maybe it's easy to go into an overcorrection of, wait a minute, nothing is my fault. When really, it's somewhere in between. The truth is, you have control of a lot of your actions and a lot of your fate, even though there are lots of things that happen that are outside of your control. And I don't want to go too far into that, because it starts to go, in a rabbit hole of its own. But there's this lovely thing called personal growth, as I mentioned before. You can be better. You can be the best version of yourself possible. And that doesn't mean just letting go and whatever comes out, comes out. It's, what do you like about yourself? What don't you like about yourself? What can you change? What can you work on? What can't you change? And what what do you just let ride? Because there are faults in us that we won't be able to change, but there are faults in us that we can mitigate, or things that we can turn into strengths.
Anything can change!
And I believe creativity is one of those things. I think people who are unimaginative or not creative can absolutely work that muscle and become more creative in the end. I feel like I'm one of those people that, I'm more of a straight line logic based person, and at the same time, I've learned to be more descriptive. So, like for me as a DM, it's easy for me to say, it's a tree. You see a tree, an oak tree or something like that. But you can learn to say it's a gorgeous oak, with. See, I'm even having trouble with this. Its branches turning uh, red in the fall, slowly turning from that green to yellowish orange. Things like that kind of give people more of a picture, and you can work on that. I just improv that right off the top of my head. But for somebody like me, it's easier to just say something, right? It's a tree, or say something outright. I'm a very direct person. I like to say things in as few words as I can because I'm not a huge fan of talking. And here I am doing a video about talking, which is lovely. And it's part of my personal growth. There you have it. But again, back to the topic at hand. It's very harmful to Matt. And again, we should get rid of this get rid of this language of the Mercer Effect. It should not exist in our vocabulary. There's no reason for it. It's not real. It doesn't exist. But it's, like I said, it's also harmful to us for a reason that I just explained, that it just keeps us in this victim mentality of the Mercer Effect. He did this to us. He did this to us. Therefore, D&D, my D&D is never going to be good because of Matt Mercer. Or you can think of it as Matt Mercer's great, and we're not like Critical Role, but we can grow and we can, learn from him, and we can make our own game, and that will progress over time. It will get better. When a bard inspires a fighter, it doesn't get the fighter to copy the bard. What it does is it makes the fighter be a stronger version of himself. Now, even if it's a bard inspiring another bard, it's not necessarily getting that bard to be the same as the other bard. It's trying to make him a stronger version of himself as well. I'm a DM, and our game started off somewhat rough. We weren't perfect. The players weren't perfect. I wasn't perfect from the start. I made tons of errors, like, from the beginning. But over time, I think we've gotten a somewhat decent game going right now that has really grown because, well, we all learned. I get it. I get it. It's frustrating. You start the game and you're not immediately Sam Riegel singing about, shitting on people's beds, or you're not Laura Bailey making funny accents and saying funny things and just being amazing at improv, or Travis and his incredibly commanding and just badass presence that he brings to the table. And, as a DM, you're not immediately Matt, who can describe things in a way that touches all the senses and paints a good picture while not overdoing it and still having the focus on the players. It's great, and it's a great thing to learn from, but again, you're not going to be Matt Mercer right away, and nor should you try to be. Here's the thing. It's actually somewhat insulting to think that you're going to be as good as they are on your first game. Like, they've been doing this for a couple years prior to the first stream, and Matt has been DMing for well over a decade before Critical Role. So, do you think he started out that good? Hell no. He definitely had to learn. He had to grow. He had to, because of his introspective personality and, again, taking blame for things that may or may not be his fault, he grows from things. And I mean, if there's one positive thing about having, that imposter syndrome, it's that it allows him to keep growing. It doesn't allow him to get stuck in one place for too long, because he's constantly trying to improve on himself. And that's a great thing, even though it comes as a result of this terrible mental condition. So, if there's one thing you should learn from Matt, it's that you can always learn, you can always grow. We've seen Matt grow on the stream, even. Things that he remembers that he didn't used to remember before. Things about, like, rules and, regulations, or learning how to deal with certain players. He's learned how to deal with, different types of players better than he did when he started. And it really shows. Because 250 some episodes later, if you include Campaign 1, Campaign 2, he's had his own personal growth in there. And like I said, you guys can too. We all can. And that's sort of the silver lining, is that if we eliminate this verbiage of the Matt Mercer effect and acknowledge that maybe we just need to try a little bit harder and work at it, instead of just blaming Matt Mercer and giving up, we can all learn to be better dungeon masters and players and just people in general. And that's kind of, it doesn't just apply to Dungeons and Dragons, it applies to life. Just because somebody has something that you don't, doesn't mean that it's their fault that you don't have it. You can work at things, and you can work at being better. That's what it means to be human. We struggle, and sometimes we fail, sure, and sometimes it's not meant to be, but again, that's like the beauty and tragedy of life, is that not all humans are going to be the same. We're flawed beings, and but we have different experiences, and we can share those experiences through stories and writings and visual medium. It's what keeps us going as a society and as entertainment. So that's ultimately sort of the uplifting part of this video, is that we can be better. Every single one of us. You just have to, I get it, it's hard. It's difficult. Like, it was difficult for me to make a description about a tree on the spot. You guys literally watched me struggle with that for a second. And I don't mind revealing those vulnerabilities, because I can be better. And I will be better. In time. I'm still working on it. We all are. And we're all doing it together. And that's sort of the purpose of Critical Role's community. That's the good side of it, right? There's the ugly, toxic side that nothing's ever good enough for some of these people. It's, oh, Matt's a horrible DM because he forgot this violation, or he disrespected this group of people by saying something off the cuff, or this or that, and you shouldn't have taken money from this company, and you should have taken down this episode. Yes, I went there. But there's the positive side of the Critical Role community, which is, let's help each other. There's the kiss of death, that is the critter hug, right? I guess that's not the right term for it, kiss of death. It's more like the critter hug of death, right? That's what they call it. Where critters have been so generous to each other. Things like GoFundMes and things like that we've helped fund, on top of just being insanely generous towards the Legends of Vox Machina, which I can't wait for. It's going to be amazing, I'm sure. But that's the true essence of the critter community, the Critical Role community, is that we help each other and we inspire each other to be better, not just not just accepting of each other, which I'm all for being accepting of one another for who they are, but also building each other up and inspiring each other to be better. And that's what I really want to put out here today, is not to tear you down and say that you're a terrible human being because you lack creativity. It's that maybe you do lack creativity, but you can be better. And we're all here for each other as critters. So let's grow together. Thanks for watching.